Birds fans, appreciate you streaming in with us here on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We'll be hanging with you for the next 2 hours talking birds, and more birds. So stay tuned to us. J-Mac, let me take a peek here. Not that you can necessarily tell. It all comes down to the lighting or where you're at. You're looking a little less peaked than you were yesterday.
I don't know.
Wishful thinking on my part? Is that
I
what you're
guess that's
telling me?
good. Really, it's just a cough, persistent cough. I can't get rid of it, and it's annoying because you're talking, and I partially talk for a living, and
Yeah,
then
that's
halfway
true.
through you start having a coughing fit. It doesn't, it's not optimal. Let's say that.
Understood, and we appreciate your cutting it out and getting it done for the 2 hours of Birds 365. And yesterday, while you were retaining your cough and sucking it up and getting it done, you did spot the fact that Tom Pelissero was reporting that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had suffered a lacerated kidney, the magnitude of which we don't have all the details yet. You didn't get them down there yesterday. We had a chance to talk to the coaching staff because they weren't going to give them to you anyway. But a lacerated kidney is what it is. And you hearken back to Zach Ertz playing with one during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. Usually a solid couple weeks, 2, 3, 3, 4, depending on the magnitude of the laceration that he got to his kidney. Eagles are going to be right out there starting safety for a while, are they not?
Yeah, just a matter of how long. I think they're debating whether to put him on injured reserve. So obviously, it's the 4 game sort of demarcation line. If he goes on IR, he's got to miss 4 games. Then you start looking at obviously the end of the regular season. We got 6 to go. The thought is he's going to be back sometime in the regular season. If I were the Eagles, I'd be cautious. I'd probably just put him on injured reserve. Zach is probably a bad example because Zach shouldn't have played. Zach played after about a week. Not after about a week, after 1 week. In a lot of ways, that was the start of the disconnect with the organization because he felt he was a little disrespected for what he did for the organization. And he probably was, to be honest, because that is a difficult injury. He was in a lot of pain, and he played through it. I wouldn't count on that. Andrew Luck. There's a lot of examples. Andrew Luck, they shut him down when he lacerated his kidney. Keenan Allen, very familiar to Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, got shut down with a lacerated kidney. So there are varying degrees of the injury, number one. So the Eagles are still gathering information, but they do expect him back at some point. So that's the good news. Similar to what we talked about with Dallas Goedert and Devonta Maddox and what they're going through right now with those players. Can you persevere without them? It's a little bit more difficult at that position. Is it worse than tight end? I don't know. Everybody's talking about Malcolm Jenkins. I don't see that. I think it's wait and see mode with Reed Blankenship. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, Jody, because, he played really well and thrown into the fire for the first time. That's the first time really he's ever played. He had 2-3 snaps. I forget the exact number. And he kind of won the job behind the scenes, the dime job from Kayvon Wallace. I don't know if he won it or Kayvon lost it because Kayvon, every time he got an opportunity, performed pretty poorly. So that kind of happened behind the scenes. But the Eagles are in dimes so infrequently, you don't get to see it very much. And all of a sudden, he goes from not playing at all to playing all these reps, and he first undrafted rookie ever to intercept Aaron Rodgers. And that was a smart, savvy football play. That wasn't just he threw him the football. He read what was going on and came from the backside. Rodgers didn't see him. It was a really, really nice play. And you could see his football IQ. And then you saw some of the bad. And, there's not many people in this league. I wouldn't get too upset that he couldn't chase down Christian Watson. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the angle that he put himself in, and then it's just over. You gotta make sure, especially when you're playing players like that. But I talked to him after the game, and he noted he hadn't played in a while, so that's part of it as well. You just got to get used to it. And then I go back to his time at Middle Tennessee State. He was a 5-year starter. This is what the Eagles kept saying. He was a 5-year starter. He just played a lot of football. And I know it's Middle Tennessee State, and I know it's not Alabama, but boy, sometimes those guys who just play a lot and play a lot and play, they just know how to play, and they just have a better feel for how to play. I'm not saying he's going to be great. I'm not saying he's going to be terrible. There's a lot of uncertainty, but he's going to be out there for a few weeks, bare minimum.
Right. But I'm not going to cut him a ton of slack on the Christian Watson play. If you're going to, on one hand, give him credit, hey, this guy played 5 years as a starter on the collegiate level, and that led to him being able to almost ball fake Aaron Rodgers into throwing that interception, then you can't, on the other hand, go, yeah, but he hadn't played much. So you can understand him leaving a bad angle for himself to make that. Well, no. Either he is a guy who's up to speed or he's not a guy who's up to speed. It's one or the other. If you're going to give him credit for the phenomenal play he made, well, then he's got to take the grief for the bad play he made. Just overall, yeah, the Eagles are going. There's going to be a drop-off. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson led the NFL in interception. So you're going to a guy who's a rookie, undrafted, free agent. There's a drop-off. We'll find out how drastic that drop-off is. But as you noted, overall, we all paid close attention to the two big plays, the one interception and the one chunk play touchdown that he was a big part of both, one good, one bad. The rest of the time, he graded out pretty damn well. So that's a good sign.
That's defensive player on the Eagles, according to PFF, in the game, which is pretty amazing. So he did, overall, he played pretty well.
Exactly.
The only reason I bring up the Watson play and I give him a little bit of, I get it. He got marked down for that play. It's just tough to replicate that speed when you're not playing. And, as you're on the field with more guys like that, you get more used to it, and hopefully it gets a little bit better. But if he keeps taking angles like that, think about Tyreek Hill as a more example, because he plays all the, and everybody knows what a superstar he is. You take a wrong angle on Tyreek Hill, you're done. You're cooked. And you have to understand who you're playing against. Well, that comes with experience, that comes with reps, and that comes with understanding your opponent. So, yeah, all rookies, not just him. That's always a difficult circumstance. And then that's where, playing at Middle Tennessee State also certainly hinders you, because you're not going to see a ton of that level of talent at Middle Tennessee State. So,
yeah, but like I said, at Middle Tennessee State, you're not going to see Aaron Rodgers either. And
no.
Yeah, he did dupe Aaron Rodgers into the pick that he threw. So he is what he is. And what he is right now is the Eagles starting safety. But if they're going to put Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the IR, which we don't know yet, they might even wait till after this week's game to get a little bit further into his rehab and be able to diagnose where he's at. So I don't know that it's immediate, unless they know guaranteed we're looking at 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. Then chances are they're going to act pretty quickly, because they have a roster spot to fill. Even if it's not a guy who's going to step in and play, somebody's got to now back up Reed Blankenship. So names are being kicked around. You threw one out. You and I were texting yesterday to try and get another guest. And Scott Grayson of Fox 29 is going to jump on with us in hour number 2. I suggested, hey, we haven't had John Clark on a while. And sure enough, I put on NBC 10, and here's John Clark talking to Malcolm Jenkins at his charity affair here in town last night. And of course, the question came up, hey, the Eagles now have a need at safety, Malcolm. You look like you're in great shape there, buddy. What do you think? And Malcolm rightfully downplayed it and said, listen, I'm not even a free agent. There are hoops that would have to be jumped through to make something like that happen, let alone the fact that Malcolm hasn't played football. But then again, Linval Joseph and Dominican Sue hadn't played football, and they stepped right in and play. And Malcolm is one of the more beloved players here last decade or so, part of the championship team. Give me a percentage chance that something along the lines of Malcolm Jenkins rejoining the Eagles in the next 4 or 5 days.
Less than 10%. I would put it at, and the only reason I put it that highly is because you never say never with Howie. I've been burned too many times to not leave the door open a little bit, but. The most important part you bring up, he's not even a free agent. He was placed on the reserve retired list by the Saints. So they still.
And by the way, the Saints would let
and
Malcolm
the Saints
play.
Are not going to help the Eagles. Yeah.
Oh, they would if the Eagles gave him their first round pick back.
Yeah, you want to do that? They're not gonna be getting in line to help the Eagles again.
Understood.
So that's a part of it as well. Linval and Dominican Sue, they were free agents. They could do whatever the heck they wanted. So that's the most obvious difference. You know, I saw Malcolm at practice 2 weeks ago. He was visiting. He's also he's lost some weight. From his playing days. He was a big physical safety at the end. So he played at about 200, right at about 200, a little over 200. Guessing he's probably 185, 190. So he's not in his typical Malcolm Jenkins shape. Now we said, he's Malcolm Jenkins. He's always in good shape, but you could tell. What I'm trying to say is, you could tell he had kind of turned the page and moved on, and wasn't thinking about playing football. Now. Things change pretty quickly in the NFL, and they change quickly here because I think the key would be, is Chauncey done for the season? And I don't think he's done for the season. If he's done for the season, then you got to get a safety, and you got to get a safety that can play. I remember talking to an Eagles personnel guy at the trade deadline, because we were all saying, do they need a third safety? Because nobody believed in Kayvon Wallace, never mind Reed Blankenship. The thing they said was, well, number one, we're good with our starting safeties. So they're very happy with Marcus and Chauncey, obviously CJ. And his thought process at the time was like, if you can't help us on special teams, it's not, we don't play that third safety enough where it's going to be relevant. So to me, it would have to be as a starter. And the only way he would be brought in to be a starter is if one of them was done for the season. And that means Chauncey's done for the season, which I don't think is the case. So I don't think he's going to come in as a backup safety to play special teams at 35, although Malcolm has been willing to do it. And remember, that's a big concern for the Eagles, special teams. So you got to be good at it. I don't see the fit. I don't think, and the one curveball could be if the doctors come back and say, this is really bad. It's probably going to be an Andrew Luck type situation. You're probably going to have to shut him down for the season. Then I think that opens everything. You got to go find a safety, and a starting level safety, or as good as you can replicate a starting level safety at this point of the calendar. But I don't think that's where the Eagles are, and they think Chauncey's going to be back.
Understood where you're at, but they still need a body. Whether it's starting level, backup level, contributing on special teams, take the job of the person you're going to sign in whatever direction you want, tied to when you think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to come back. They still need a guy, a safety for whatever role they think he's going to play. They did cut a couple of veteran safeties late in training camp this year. One of which was their starting safety last year. Another of which was our buddy Jaquaski Tart, who where's
we're going to get the Jaquaski.
Not on the stream yet. I'm surprised. We need Jaquaski Tart's return here to Philadelphia, even though he's had 9 weeks to land a job and he hasn't got one. But neither has Anthony Harris. Are either those two guys who were cut late in the preseason before the year started on the Eagles' radar right now? Again, factoring in however much you think that Gardner-Johnson's going to be out, do you think either of those two guys intrigue? Will they reach out? Will they make contact with either of those two former Eagle safeties?
Well, Anthony is on the Broncos, so
he is. Oh, okay.
No,
I thought he was on. I thought he was on a street.
No, he signed on their practice squad pretty early, September-ish, and then he got promoted to the active roster.
My bad.
A few weeks ago. He has a long history with George Patton out there, so those two are very close. So he's not available. With Jaquaski Tart, now the Eagles would have no interest in that. It just wasn't a fit. I'll just leave it at that. From the standpoint, they did. Excuse me, first cough of the day. They did bring in Marquise Blair a couple of weeks ago. If people missed it on the practice squad. You might recognize him because he's a former second-round pick. He's had a lot of injury issues, but there's some talent there. So who knows? It might be as simple as that. You just elevate Marquise Blair, and then you start looking around practice squads and, is there anybody you can get? And I think our buddy Jimmy Kempsey is going to be on later in the week. Did a good job over at Philly Boys, looking at the guys that they've had a history with and guys they're comfortable with. And he brought up Elijah Riley. People remember him. He's with Pittsburgh now. Jared Maiden is with your Jets. Was with the Eagles for a while. Another Alabama guy. Remember the Ugo Amadi era? He was here for about 7 days, if that, less than 7 days. He is in Kansas City, I believe. So those are some of the guys that maybe.
Now, are these guys on the practice squad? Because you just informed me, and shame on me, I should have known. Anthony Harris is on the actual Bronco roster. Are these other safeties on people's practice squad that if the Eagles wanted to, and I think, as you pointed out, kind of depending on the designation of how they're going to handle Gardner-Johnson, if he goes to IR, then you have a roster flexibility spot to deal with. Are these guys you're suggesting they could sign and put immediately on the roster?
Yeah, they're all practice squad guys right now. So the Eagles could offer them a roster spot, sign them off somebody else's practice squad. And basically what that does is it guarantees you 3 weeks. You have to keep the guy on the roster for 3 weeks. So could work if they got to place CJ on injured reserve. You got the 4-week window anyway. If it doesn't work out, you could just move on. But the Eagles do have that sort of history of going back to people they have a history with. So I think, looking at guys that were here before and they're comfortable with is probably it makes sense, just kind of the way they do business.
But let me ask you to speculate a little on this, because you're right. We're judging Eagles in two veins. Number one is the Howie Roseman era and the way they've done business while Howie's been in charge. But I think just as importantly is the Nick Sirianni era. And the fact that a guy was an Eagle before Nick Sirianni got here, came and went, I think lessens the desire to sign a guy like that, because you would think that you'd want the coaching staff to have a good feel for a guy's capability, not just, well, Howie said, we had him here in 2019. So what? And Nick Sirianni doesn't know him. Jonathan Gannon doesn't know him. Shane Steichen doesn't know him. I think that would lessen the possibility of, hey, he used to be an Eagle. We know him. If we as the coach, not the coaching staff, how really important is it?
The Eagles pretty much keep those things. Howie's in charge of personnel. How should I say? So,
You think he would? You think he'd, without an agreement with the coaching staff, he'd just say, "Hey, listen, I'm getting this guy. I need."
No, I think it's more of the coaching staff trust him, and rightfully so because of the roster he's built, and they're not gonna. I mean, remember, we're not talking about a star player. Maybe it's somebody. If you're bringing in a star player in the offseason, there's probably more conversations that go back and forth. We need a safety. This is what we like, coverage safety. Can he mirror? The Eagles don't really have free and strong safeties. Can he go back and forth? These are the traits we want. Go get us the best guy available. That's pretty much how it's happened. But Howie's in charge of personnel. And the coaching staff rightfully has a lot of confidence in him, and they should have a lot of confidence in him right now.
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac, your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. We had Mike Gill here at one point in the green room, but then he dropped off. He was outside.
I was getting too wordy, Jody.
Do you think he went back inside to get another cup of coffee? He was ready to broadcast from outside. More power to him. We got Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down the shore up here, usual Wednesday contributor to the show. Like I said, a little later, Scott Grayson from Fox 29 is going to hop on. We are just getting underway on a midweek Wednesday edition of Birds 365.